Welcome back to Criminal Minds Podcast, where we dive into the darkest corners of true crime and the human psyche. Today's episode is a journey into a modern cult that shook the world, a cult that not only promised salvation but delivered an apocalyptic nightmare. We're talking about Aum Shinrikyo, the Japanese cult behind the 1995 Tokyo subway sarin attack and a trail of terror, manipulation, and mass murder. Quick warning. Today's episode contains graphic details about chemical warfare, murder, and the psychological manipulation inherent in cult dynamics. Listener discretion is advised. To understand Aum Shinrikyo, we need to travel back to the early 1980s. The cult was founded by Shoko Asahara, a man who proclaimed himself a guru and a prophet. Born Chizuo Matsumoto, Asahara began his spiritual journey amid Japan's economic boom, a time when many were searching for meaning beyond material success. In 1984, Asahara established Aum Shinrikyo, which means supreme truth in Japanese. On the surface, it presented itself as a spiritual organization offering enlightenment, personal growth, and even insights into advanced technology. But lurking beneath this veneer was a vision of impending apocalypse and a ruthless desire to reshape the world. Asahara combined elements of Buddhism, Hinduism, and his own apocalyptic prophecies. He warned his followers that the world was doomed and that only those who were awakened could survive the coming catastrophe. This message resonated with a generation of disillusioned youth and professionals seeking deeper meaning. They took part in bizarre rituals, such as drinking his bathwater and wearing electrical caps they believed synchronized their brain waves with Asahara's. Asahara chose doctors, lawyers, and scientists from Japan's top universities as his top aides, making them ministers of his pseudo-government of the Aum Empire. They worshipped him and carried out his orders. The group used donations from followers and earnings from yoga classes and health food businesses to amass cash to buy land and equipment. Aum Shinrikyo grew rapidly. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, it had attracted tens of thousands of followers, highly educated professionals, scientists, and even influential business people. Many were drawn not just by spiritual promises, but by the cult's promise of secret knowledge and power. Behind the scenes, however, Asahara was hard at work. The cult wasn't just preaching spirituality, it was preparing for an apocalyptic showdown. Members were indoctrinated with the belief that the end was near and that they played a pivotal role in a divine war between good and evil. Training in martial arts, meditation, and even survival tactics became common. And Aum Shinrikyo started investing in scientific research, specifically in the fields of chemistry and biology. This wasn't to improve lives, but to develop weapons of mass destruction. By the early 1990s, Aum Shinrikyo had amassed a secret arsenal. The cult had built laboratories in remote areas where members worked on synthesizing chemicals like sarin, a potent nerve agent. They believed that using such weapons would trigger the prophesied apocalypse and allow only their followers to survive. The attack on March 20th, 1995 left 13 people dead and more than 6,000 injured, many of whom were left blind or disabled by coming into contact with the toxic nerve agent. First developed by Nazi chemists in the Second World War. 5 members of Aum Shinrikyo entered the underground system at different points during the Monday morning rush hour, each wearing surgical masks and carrying packets of liquid sarin wrapped in newspapers inside plastic bags amounting to almost a liter each. When coming into contact with just one drop the size of a pinhead is enough to prove fatal. The 5 also carried umbrellas with them bearing sharpened tips, which they used to pierce the packets and release the volatile chemical before exiting the trains in the company of their 5 getaway drivers. Ikuo Hayashi carried out his attack on the Chiyoda line, Kenichi Hirose and Toru Toyota on the Marunouchi line, and Masato Yokoyama and Yasuo Hayashi on the Hibiya line. The puddles and leaking bags caused mass panic as commuters began to feel the effects of the fumes, several foaming at the mouth and coughing up blood. Emergency services personnel brought 688 people to local hospitals, while 5,510 more arrived by their own means. Ambulances crews were subsequently criticized for their hesitant handling of the incident, as was the subway authority, who failed to halt several trains when word spread. The public were particularly angry about the failure to respond quickly, because Aum Shinrikyo had used sarin in a previous attack 9 months earlier, killing 8 and injuring more than 500 in Matsumoto by dispersing the gas from a converted refrigeration truck. Asahara and his acolytes had carried out these acts of bioterrorism because they believed the apocalypse was inevitable and would be caused by a Third World War between the US and Japan. Only devotees of Shoko, who claimed to be the reincarnation of Buddha, would survive the coming nuclear Armageddon and live with him in the mythic mountain kingdom of Shambhala. Shoko was born partially blind in Yatsushiro in 1955, the son of tatami mat manufacturers. Known as a bully at school, he graduated and studied acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine before being convicted of prescribing pharmaceuticals without a license in 1981. He became interested in astrology and Taoism and founded Aum Shinrikyo as a yoga school in 1987, basing his teachings on Vajrayana scriptures and the Bible and publishing his doctrine, Declaring Myself the Christ, in 1992. His peculiar faith had 10,000 followers in Japan and 30,000 in Russia at the peak of its popularity. Operating a compound at the base of Mount Fuji where its members developed the chemical weapons used. In 1990, the organization sought to gain a legitimate foothold in Japanese society by running candidates in upper house elections, but were unsuccessful. A source of bitterness to Asahara, who subsequently began targeting the public. The group resurfaced in 2000, having disassociated itself from Asahara and his methods following his arrest, and rebranded itself as Aleph, paying compensation to the victims of its earlier attacks. They are still regarded with suspicion, and their offices in southern Tokyo remain under constant surveillance. The attack was meticulously planned. Perpetrators, clad in dark clothing and protective masks, released sarin gas in several subway trains during rush hour. Panic spread as the invisible gas paralyzed victims, leaving them writhing in agony on platforms and inside trains. In the aftermath of the Tokyo subway attack, Japanese authorities launched an intensive investigation. The scale of the disaster forced the government to scrutinize Aum Shinrikyo's operations. Over the ensuing years, a web of conspiracies and dark secrets was uncovered. Key leaders and members were arrested, and the spotlight finally fell on Shoko Asahara. His apocalyptic message, once a beacon for thousands, was now exposed as the twisted ideology behind unspeakable terror. During the trials, evidence was overwhelming. Documents and internal communications detailed experiments with chemical weapons, plans for further attacks, and the systematic indoctrination of members. Asahara tried to defend his actions as part of a divine plan, but the court saw him as a mastermind behind mass murder. In 2004, Shoko Asahara was sentenced to death, and in 2018, his sentence was carried out. Several high-ranking members received lengthy prison sentences, and while the cult's influence has waned, the scars of its terror remain. What made Aum Shinrikyo so dangerous wasn't just its access to lethal chemicals, it was its mastery of psychological manipulation. Asahara exploited the deepest fears and insecurities of his followers, convincing them that salvation lay only in total submission to his vision. He created an environment where dissent was impossible. The isolation from family, rigorous training regimens, and constant reinforcement of apocalyptic prophecies served to entrench loyalty and suppress critical thinking. The psychological control left many unable to see the reality of their situation until it was too late. Even after the cult disintegrated, former members struggled to reconcile their indoctrinated beliefs with the horrifying actions they had been a part of. As we reflect on the rise and fall of Aum Shinrikyo, we are left with lingering questions. How could a cult that promised enlightenment and salvation morph into an engine of terror? What vulnerabilities did it exploit, and what lessons can we learn to prevent similar tragedies in the future? These questions are particularly pertinent in today's digital age, where radical ideologies can spread faster than ever. Aum Shinrikyo stands as a stark reminder that when fear meets unchecked authority, the consequences can be catastrophic. In the end, the story of Aum Shinrikyo is a tale of profound betrayal, a cult that twisted faith into a weapon and left an indelible scar on modern history. It challenges us to remain vigilant, to question charismatic leadership, and to safeguard our communities from the seductive allure of extremism. Thank you for joining us on this in-depth exploration of Aum Shinrikyo, a cult whose shocking actions continue to haunt us. As we close this episode, let the lessons from this apocalyptic nightmare remind us of the importance of critical thought, compassion, and collective vigilance. If you found this episode enlightening, please subscribe, leave a review, and share your thoughts. Your feedback helps us continue uncovering the stories that shape our understanding of the world. Don't let the mystery end here. Subscribe now and join our community to unlock exclusive insights and untold secrets. Hit the bell, share your thoughts, and be the first to dive into our next deep dive investigation. Your journey into the truth starts now. Stay safe, stay informed, and keep questioning. We'll see you next time on Criminal Minds Podcast.